Hello, everyone. My name is Pam Yankee. They call me the fabulous farm babe in Wisconsin. I'm the farm director of the Midwest Farm Report radio network across the state. And this is an unusual year, to say the least. You know, normally we'd be getting together and talking about what's happening with Wisconsin agriculture, all of agriculture at a lot of different events, not the least of which happening this year is our Granddaddy Dairy Show, World Dairy Expo. So these conversations online and virtual town hall meetings have given us a chance to reconnect and talk about the issues that matter this time, specifically with regards to dairy and Wisconsin dairy. As a farm kid myself, I grew up in Wisconsin on a dairy farm, still farm on the family farm, and am obviously connected with the industry. This has been a very trying year. Our Wisconsin farm families have seen so many ups and downs, and this was going to be the year when we kind of rallied back after a lousy growing season of 2019. So a lot of different elements that are at work here. I want to thank the National Milk Producers Federation, U.S. Dairy Export Council, and Farmers for Free Trade for hosting this dialogue today and inviting me to be your MC. With COVID-19 and this global pandemic that continues to wage on across the world, we can't get together, but it's more important now than ever that we are connected as an industry in making sure that we're sharing what we have as far as stories, talking to those consumers, and now talking to policyholders. You know, we all recognize that when it comes to what's going to be going on with the political arena, it really is not so much on this conversation about who ends up in the White House, but what are we going to have as far as conversations with those people when they get there, talking about what's going on in the food industry and so forth. So AgTalks is designed to try to help do that. Today's town hall is part of a national conversation that's been going on now. In fact, Wisconsin is the finale, shall we say. Farmers for Free Trade and their sponsoring groups have brought these dialogues to everyone virtually, and we want to thank those participating businesses and agricultural organizations like the National Corn Growers Association, National Milk Producers Federation, U.S. Dairy Export Council, Farmers for Free Trade, Corn Refiners Association, Plant-Based Products Council, KCOESUM, World Strategies, North America's Meat Institute, Fresh Produce Association of the Americas, the American Farm Bureau, and the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture. AgTalks is a national conversation focused in on trade, the supply chains, and the future of American agriculture. It's critically important that we keep this conversation going. In the past couple of years, and most recently 2020, we've seen all kinds of significant disruptions in our agriculture trade. It's been tariffs, it's been retaliatory tariffs, it's been decreasing exports, depressed commodity prices, increasing costs on the farm continue. AgTalks is trying to focus forward in a constructive way, non-political way, in keeping conversations going. Like I said, it really doesn't matter what the 2020 election is all about, but how does the agricultural community want to see that next White House and the Congress? What policies can Congress and the White House put together that will help boost our exports, get U.S. agriculture back on a more solid footing? So today, this virtual town hall is the fifth in a series that AgTalks has been holding this summer. AgTalks already has had these kind of progressive conversations through these town halls in Iowa, Minnesota, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And as I said, Wisconsin wraps it up today. They're going to put together a final summary report with these conversations in the next couple of months. So you're going to want to watch for that and reference back the website agtalks.net, agtalks.net. With that, couple of housekeeping items that I want to remind you about. We are going to be recording this program, so everything is on the record. The session will be recorded and will be available after today's session on AgTalks website, again, agtalks.net. I'll also be sharing it over on my MidwestFarmReport.com website, Fabulous Farm Babe on Facebook. We're going to open the session to audience questions and welcome you to send in your questions via the question button on the bottom of your screen. Angela Hoffman with Farmers for Free Trade is behind the scenes today, and she is going to make sure she's reviewing those questions, queuing them up for the panelists to discuss. So please get active in that. If you're the media, make sure that they know you are the media. Identify yourself. That'll help to make sure that they prioritize your questions in the queue. During the question and answer portion of the program, we'll see the administrator also adding 2 polls through the Zoom platform. When you see those polling questions pop up, please go ahead and respond to the polls. That's going to be a part of the summary results at the end of the town hall also. And most importantly, all the panelists have already been briefed, but I'll remind you again, please, if you're not speaking, if you're not center of the stage, mute your microphones so that we don't hear the dog barking or you clearing your throat or something like that. With that being said, on a beautiful Tuesday, it is my pleasure to welcome in your moderator for today. He is no stranger to many of us in agriculture as a longstanding stalwart of agriculture and now, most importantly, the dairy industry. You already know him probably as Secretary VILSACK. He was the secretary with the president and under the Obama administration. He also now president and CEO of the U.S. Dairy Export Council, served as U.S. Ag Secretary from 2009 to 2017. And before that, 8 years as the governor of Iowa. They sometimes forget about that. Mr. Secretary, it's a pleasure to catch up with you again. And with that being said, I hand the baton of the microphone over to you for this fantastic virtual town hall.
Pam, thanks very, very much. And thanks for the opportunity to be with all of you today. And I want to thank Pam for being the MC, but more importantly, for being such a strong voice for American agriculture and certainly for Wisconsin agriculture. I would always enjoy my opportunities to visit Wisconsin and spend some time with Pam. As she's tough. She's a tough interviewer, I'll tell you that. And I had to take a lot of grief for my football preferences, which are not, unfortunately, the Green Bay Packers. I'm pretty sure everybody else on this call will, in fact, be a Green Bay Packer fan. In fact, if you can see Pam, she's behind her is Bart Starr, Brett Favre, and that other guy, Aaron Rodgers. All 3 great quarterbacks. Listen, I want to add my thanks to Pam's thanks for the National Milk Producers Federation endorsement and sponsoring of this particular town hall. You know, they represent somewhere between 37, 38,000 hardworking dairy farm families throughout the United States and do a tremendous job representing their interests. Also sponsoring this particular talk is obviously the Farmers for Free Trade. They've done a tremendous job of organizing these events across the country. Certainly did a tremendous job as well organizing a series of events in anticipation of the ratification of the USMCA trade agreement, and we thank them for their continued effort at supporting free trade. And I'd be remiss if I didn't note the 110 member organization that I happen to be the president and CEO of, United States Area Export Council, which is also helping to sponsor this event today. I'm just going to add one quick comment to the great work that Pam in laying this out in terms of its importance. The reality is that American agriculture has suffered through some difficult times, and certainly the dairy industry in particular. Exports is incredibly important to every aspect of American agriculture. On any given year, anywhere from 20 to 30% of everything we grow and raise and produce in this country has to be exported to the rest of the world. And a good significant percentage of farm income, anywhere from 15 to 20% of farm income, is directly related to those export sales. If we don't export, then essentially many farmers don't do as well as they possibly can do. And clearly exports are going to continue to take an ever increasing important role in the future as we, the United States, represent roughly 4% of the consuming public globally. That means that 96% of customers are outside the shores of the US. So it is important for us to have a discussion about trade and to make sure that the trade policy of the government is one that helps to support and sponsor agricultural trade. Agriculture has been a bright spot for trade historically for the United States. We've enjoyed a trade surplus for many, many years. And not only do we help obviously stabilize farm income with exports, but we also create and support a number of jobs throughout the United States in processing facilities and export-related jobs, literally hundreds of thousands of folks employed as a result of exports and agriculture. So important discussion, and we are very blessed today to have an incredible, extraordinary panel. And I want to take this opportunity to briefly introduce them. I'm going to start with my good friend, Jim Mulhern, who is no stranger to Wisconsin, a noted Green Bay Packer fan, I might add, but he's also here today as president and CEO of the National Milk Producers Federation. I will tell you, having worked with Jim, both as secretary and now as a partner at USDEC, I can tell you that there's no more effective spokesperson for the dairy industry in our nation's capital than Jim Mulhern, and we are certainly honored to have him today. Joining Jim is Jeff SCHWAGER, who is the president of Satori Cheese. I think everybody in Wisconsin knows and appreciates the history of Satori Cheese, a fourth generation family owned, tried and true Wisconsin cheese producer, one that has been acknowledged both domestically and internationally, the winner of over 330 most recognized domestic and international cheese awards. Jeff has led the effort there since 2009 and has really worked to develop this company into a premier retail brand that has worldwide distribution capabilities. It's certainly an important voice to add to our trade discussion today. Joining Jim and Jeff, Chad Vincent. Chad is the CEO of the Wisconsin Milk Marketing Board, which is doing business as Dairy Farmers of Wisconsin. He's been in that position since 2016. No stranger to the dairy industry, with over 30 years of experience, including being a senior vice president for strategy and a chief marketing officer, as well as a vice president for strategy at Satori Cheese. So we're certainly happy to have Chad with us today. Certainly understands the significance and importance of exports as it relates to Wisconsin dairy producers. Joining these three gentlemen is Jeff Lyons. Jeff Lyon is the CEO of Farm First Dairy Cooperative. He's been in that position since 2018. Prior to serving in that capacity, he was also the Deputy Undersecretary at the Wisconsin Department of Ag, Trade, and Consumer Protection. 22 years of government relations service for the Wisconsin Farm Bureau Federation. So Jeff is certainly absolutely understands the importance and significance of trade to Wisconsin and Wisconsin dairy. And finally, the last person on our panel, certainly not the least, is Randy ROMANSKI, who is the Secretary Designee by Governor Evers to serve as the Wisconsin Department of Ag, Trade, and Consumer Protection Secretary. Prior to his designation, Randy has served in a number of capacities at the department as a Deputy Secretary and as Interim Secretary. He's had a variety of positions in state government and has also been very much involved in both agency and legislative endeavors. So he brings a wealth of information from a government perspective. So we have a broad array of folks here today representing various aspects of agriculture and specifically the dairy industry, who each of them understand and appreciate the importance of trade. And what we're going to do is we're going to have each of these individuals give a brief set of opening comments. That will be followed by a series of moderated questions that will be posed to some or all of the panel. And hopefully we have a lively, innovative, and instructive conversation about trade that will help to inform that report that Pam mentioned. The reality is that this is all going to culminate in a report that can be delivered to the new administration, whether it's the Trump administration or Biden administration after the 2020 election, so that we can clearly state the expectation and anticipation of the farm community in the U.S. in terms of future trade policy. So with that, what I'd like to do is give Jim Mulhern the opportunity to start. Jim, why don't you take it from here?
Great, thanks very much, Mr. Secretary. And let me just at the outset say it's an honor to be here today as part of this AgTalks series, the final one in a series of programs we've done across the country on the importance of trade, an issue which is just so integral to American agriculture and especially our dairy industry. I wish that I could be home in Wisconsin for this talk. When we initially thought about this, we envisioned doing these in person, but obviously with the situation we're dealing with here in the US and around the world, and to Pam's comments earlier, that's not possible. As we and the rest of the world grapple with this COVID-19 pandemic, I think we've seen just how interconnected our global community is. Keeping food supply chains strong and dairy exports moving has never been more important. This has underscored something that our dairy industry has learned over the past 20 years. America's dairy future growth is really tied to the success of global markets. When global dairy prices fall, we feel that impact in prices here at home, and the opposite is true as well. So when global markets rise, American dairy farmers and the American dairy industry benefits. Here at the National Milk Producers Federation, we've worked side by side with our partners at U.S. Dairy Export Council, Secretary VILSACK and his entire team for more than 2 decades to increase opportunities for American dairy exports in the international marketplace. All of this is about tapping into new markets for our high quality milk and dairy products in order to bring home benefits to our farms and our cooperatives. The result of this work is that exports have risen to provide a market for approximately 15 to 17% of US milk production. Now, that is, when you quantify that, that's 1 day of the week's production. All the milk produced in the United States, 1 day of the week, now goes overseas. These exports have increased over 600% since 1996. So almost in the last 25 years, we've had a tremendous increase in exports, but there's also tremendous potential untapped opportunity overseas that we have to achieve. In far too many markets, we're seeing growing opportunity gaps due to our competitors' aggressiveness in racking up new trade partners. The fact is, from a trade policy standpoint, we're actually falling behind our competitors, particularly the European Union. And the United States cannot let these opportunities with key ag importing markets slip away. For dairy, we need much more and faster progress on advancing fair trade rules and expanding market access in areas with a strong potential to meet a growing demand for dairy with American-made products. And that's especially true in Asia and the Middle East in particular. The bottom line is this: America's dairy farmers help produce high-quality dairy products that are renowned around the world. These exports drive economic growth here at home, and they create new jobs in rural communities that have borne the brunt of years of recession. We cannot accept unjust trade barriers that limit our export dairy market access. The dairy industry in Wisconsin and across the country is counting on the US government to help open new doors and strengthen our international supply chain through a robust and forward-leaning trade policy. Now, I'm not going to get into some of the details of that trade policy now. We'll do that in the course of this conversation. But I just, in my opening comments, I just want to stress just how important this export market is to the future of our industry. When we think about where we're at today and the productive capacity of this industry, and the fact that 15% of our production is now going overseas, 15 to 17%, and that's going to keep growing. If we didn't have that export access, think of that product backing up in the US market, having to find a home for it here, and what that would do to our prices. So this is all so inextricably tied together that we've got to keep growing our export markets. And in order to grow those markets, we need trade policies that help address both the tariff and the non-tariff trade barriers that are currently limiting our ability to access markets around the world. So let me stop there, Secretary VILSACK. I'm just grateful for the opportunity to be part of this, this conversation, to put a spotlight on these issues. I'm looking forward to the conversation we have here today.
Jim, thanks very much. And thanks again for your incredible leadership on behalf of dairy farmers all across this country. Let's turn to Jeff. And Jeff, a few comments from you in terms of exports and the importance to Satori cheese.
Great. Thanks, Secretary VILSACK. Thanks to all the sponsors for giving us this opportunity to tell the Wisconsin story. Satori cheese is an 81-year-old fourth-generation family business. We produce specialty cheese for the retail, ingredient, and food service markets. Our award-winning products are available in over 50 countries today. We purchase 100% of the milk from 87 Wisconsin family farms each and every day. We're fortunate to get high-quality milk from our farm partners, and we mix that in with the talent of our master cheesemakers. And as a result, we've been fortunate to win as many awards as any other cheese company around the world in those competitions. US cheese is second to none that's out there. Wisconsin dairy and agriculture is incredibly efficient and skilled. We're able to serve global markets and be the best in the world. We're able to delight customers in any country. Any success that we have in the global markets, though, today is hard fought. Fair trade on a bilateral basis would allow dairy to be even more significant to our economy and allow the farmers and processors to capitalize on their quality products and their efforts to be the best in the world. When we look at this year with COVID-19 coming in, it's been a tough challenge. It's not the toughest business environment to navigate through. Our retail business has done well during this time period. Our food service business has, been up and down as restaurants open, close, as states open and close and have restrictions. It's been tough. Our ingredient business has been good, but it's been subject to starts and stops as other protein manufacturers have had COVID outbreaks, and it's got the supply chain totally disrupted where you can't get one protein, so manufacturers can't continue to process. Keeping that supply chain in balance has been incredibly difficult. We're dealing with daily changes for product requests to serve our customers. The lesson we've learned is how important it is to be in all channels and markets to weather this. When we look at some of the constraints we're dealing with, the European market is closed to standard of identity generic cheese products because of unfair geographic indicators. And Europe will let you think that that's been around forever, but actually it only occurred with the formation of the EU in the 1990s. This severely limits cheese and other products for one of the best cheese markets in the world. The EU is way ahead of us in getting bilateral agreements in place, and they lead with geographic indicator protections in all those agreements. Not only are they keeping us locked out of their home market, they are attempting to lock us out of other markets around the world. For the cheese we ship to Europe, we pay more in duty per kilogram than the Europeans pay to export their cheese to the United States. What's fair in that? The trade war with China has large retaliatory tariffs on cheese, which have dramatically slowed our exports to China. New customers and existing customers are afraid to work on new business with us as they don't know where the tariffs will be going forward. USMCA is an improvement, but we are still at a disadvantage in Canada with the import limitations on US cheese. They have a bilateral trade agreement with the EU that is more favorable for cheese than with us, their closest neighbor. When we look at it, and you've heard from others already, exports need to grow to use the milk we have today and the increased milk we will have in the future as we continue to be more productive. We are not asking for unfair trade agreements. We just want fair agreements that allow us to compete equally. Once that happens, Wisconsin and American dairy will dominate in every market based upon quality and efficiency. If this doesn't occur, you're going to continue to see more dairy farms and processors go out of business. Give us the opportunity to delight consumers around the world and with our incredible products, and you will see better, more consistent and healthy milk prices and a significant increase in profitable farm operations with a rebirth to a healthy rural Wisconsin in America. Thanks, Mr. Secretary.
Jeff, well said. Thank you. Chad Vincent, you're up next. You certainly are got your ear to the ground in terms of talking with farmers and certainly understand and appreciate the importance of trade. So your comments.
Great. Well, thank you, Secretary VILSACK, and thank you to the sponsors for giving me a seat at today's meeting. The talent here on the panel is humbling. I think Wisconsin is well positioned for, as a leader in cheese, as a great potential for exports in the future. We speak a lot in Wisconsin about the 90-90 rule, where 90% of the milk in the state gets turned into cheese and 90% of that cheese goes outside the state. And, we talk to our farmers about the importance of exports. And, as Jim was speaking earlier, 1 day in 7 of the milk goes overseas. And so Wisconsin, as we look to export more value-added products, we are in the catbird seat with our product mix of world-class cheese and world-class cheese processors. So as the CEO of Dairy Farmers of Wisconsin, I run the checkoff, or it's checkoff for promotion. And so, we're funded by our farmers in the state. And one of the rules on that is that we cannot lobby. So, many in the call are experts in policy and politics and government lobbying. That's not me. I'm the business person, and I'm here to help the dairy farmers build markets and build trust in their products. The thing that concerns me a lot is that, within Wisconsin alone, very few of the elected officials today come from an ag background. And, 10, 20, 30 years ago, that wasn't necessarily the case. So our ability to get in and educate and provide insights and provide information to these elected officials is really important. At DFW, we convene and we bring together support organizations and government agencies and farmers and processors and manufacturing to really drive sales in these export markets. So, on the positive side, we've run programs partnering up with our friends at the Department of Agriculture and our partners at USDEC to bring in global buyers to Wisconsin. And as a result of those meetings, we're selling millions and millions of dollars and millions of pounds of milk and cheese and butter. I think that, we're glad that Secretary VILSACK is here, and we're fortunate to have somebody of his caliber building the team at USDEC, because that organization is paramount to dairy success in the global markets. Secretary VILSACK and his team can open up doors that few other people can, and we really value that. And we also appreciate the work that Jaime's been doing on the common food name that Jeff was speaking about, the GIs. We have the Europeans and numbers of countries are trying to claw back names to common cheeses that not only in the U.S. but across the board throughout the globe, which is really hampering our ability to compete and our ability to trade. So I just want to conclude with saying, exports are really important to Wisconsin. Canada and Mexico are two of the monsters. They're big opportunities. We need to make sure that, once again, that those markets are open for our farmers and our products. And I think we also have big opportunities in the future in Asia and in North Africa and the Mideast. So with that, I conclude my remarks. Thank you, Mr. VILSACK, and thanks for being on the panel today.
Chad, thank you very much, and thanks for your continued leadership on behalf of dairy farmers in Wisconsin. Jeff, you're up next. You obviously have seen it from a number of different areas and a number of different angles, from a state perspective and also from working with farmers. So appreciate your thoughts about trade.
Jeff, I believe we got you on mute.
There we go. There we go. Sorry about that. Yes, thank you very much, Secretary VILSACK. Appreciate the opportunity, receiving a letter from you and Jim Mulhern to participate in this. As you can see, I do have a varied background, been involved in the industry a long time. And I know our discussion today, we're talking about the future and what we can do for trade. But just a little bit of my history real quick is that I cut my teeth with Jim Mulhern on the 1985 Farm Bill. And if anybody can remember back then, that was the time when we had a support price program and you had a government purchase program, and they buy product during distress times, and then we dump some product in the market. And how things have changed and what we do now, and the innovation, the changes in policy has allowed companies like Sartori and so many of our Wisconsin cheesemakers to be so much more innovative in what they're doing and meeting the demands of what the customer wants. And like I said, that's a long time ago, but I think it helps to look back at the past as to what we need to do in the future, to continue what we've seen within the Wisconsin dairy industry and around the country. As general manager at Farm First Dairy Cooperative, as the slide says, I have privilege of representing farmers in 7 upper Midwest states. Farm First may not be familiar to everyone, but we're a merger of 3 longtime Wisconsin well-known cooperatives back in 2013. And we have about 200 years of history under one name. History's good, but focus on the future is what we really need to do about. As a cooperative represented here talking, we give our members, a collective voice in our dairy policy advocacy, rules and regulations, talking about industry promotion, and then talking about best farming practices, those kinds of things. But an opportunity to bring farmers together to develop the policies and what they want to do. And we work with that, find out what they want, and advocate on their behalf. One thing about Farm First Dairy Cooperative, we do process milk. Some do not know that, but we do not make any product. We're a milk marketing cooperative, but we market about 50 million pounds of milk each month with 170 patrons in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and the eastern side of Wisconsin through our family dairies division. So when COVID hit and everything there, I've been very involved with milk pricing and what we needed to do there. We sell that milk to all 4 of the milk classes. Our other 3,200 Farm First members, they ship to primarily proprietary processors, and many of those, like Sartori, we have members that ship to Sartori and other companies are involved in the export market. And I, like to do a shout out or whatever you want to say with Jeff SCHWAGER. When the USMCA was being negotiated, Jeff was a great voice in talking about what the tariffs, retaliatory tariffs, were going to mean. Because his company and others in the state of Wisconsin, Upper Midwest, have put significant dollars into the export market, and these trade deals, when they go south and we're not on top of things, can drastically hurt both that company, and then it goes back to the dairy farmers that are providing the milk for the cheese. So again, we represent about 9 billion pounds of annual milk production to all our members. So again, while we're not, directly as Farm First Dairy Cooperative or family dairies in the export business, we recognize that expanded dairy markets, new opportunities are going to be essential to the health of our farmers, but also to, the entire economy. Numbers have been thrown out here, but USDA estimates that $1 ag exports stimulates another $1 plus in other business activities. Our farmers are making great strides. Milk production per cow is always on the rise. They're doing it in a much more sustainable manner. We're doing all the right things, those kinds of things. And we need to cultivate those markets made for Wisconsin dairy products. Said any of our companies, our processors, to help and work with Chad, Vincent, and his team, and Department of Agriculture. You're going to hear from Randy Romanski, my experience there. The state has a lot to do with helping businesses get involved in the export market. Those are all the kinds of things that we need to do to increase dairy exports, meet customer demands, the needs, what they want. And I guess in closing, and I look forward to this entire session, but I want to thank all the sponsors for putting on this virtual town hall. Thank you very much, Secretary VILSACK.
Jeff, thank you, and thanks for putting the highlight on the expanded access of opportunity that dairy presents, not just for farm families, but also those folks who are working in the processing facilities and those who are involved in export-related jobs. Clearly, cheese is a driver of putting more milk solids into exports, and clearly a driver of increasing that milk check to farmers. Very, very important. Randy, I think you're fully aware of all of that from your current position as Secretary Designee. I'd be interested in your comments and thoughts about trade.
Thank you, Secretary VILSACK. Thanks for the opportunity to participate. And I was thinking back, it was about 10 years ago I was able to serve on your Dairy Industry Advisory Committee. So thank you, Secretary VILSACK, for your ongoing and enduring support for the dairy industry. Thanks for hosting this today. It's a great segue from Jeff to me because of our connection with the Department of Ag, Trade, and Consumer Protection. And just a little commentary on the front end. The Department of Ag, Trade, and Consumer Protection in Wisconsin serves as a resource to the citizens of Wisconsin and our diverse agriculture industry. Agriculture is a $104 billion industry in the state of Wisconsin. Obviously, we're America's dairyland. Dairy is, and will continue to be a powerhouse for our economy. One of the resources, and I'll reference this resource probably a couple times in today's conversation because of the important role they play, specifically in exports, is DACAP's International Agribusiness Center. They are established to help promote Wisconsin products internationally. They do an outstanding job of connecting the dots between Wisconsin products and customers throughout the world. And I guess I would grab onto a couple of comments that have been made previously already this morning, which is our producers, our processors just need that opportunity to continue to promote their product. They will compete on a quality and quantity basis, and that's well known. And our goal is to continue to make those connections. I wanted to start by just doing a quick current status of Wisconsin agriculture exports. As Pam indicated on the lead-in, there have been a few tough years for agriculture in Wisconsin. Low prices, there have been trade instability and disturbances. Last year we had really difficult weather patterns, and now farmers and the entire industry and all of us actually are dealing with COVID-19. Our export numbers were down across the board last year. So we started this year from a lower baseline than we did in 2017 or 2018. With trade agreements in place and tariff issues starting to subside, we were hopeful that this year would be better. There was some optimism going into 2020. Obviously, COVID-19 has had a substantial impact on our entire economy and the citizens throughout the world. Surprisingly, and despite COVID-19, we've actually seen some growth and improving trends. We still haven't made up for the losses that we saw in 2019, but these increases have been surprising and well received. An example of that is how whey exports are starting to increase as China's swine population starts to rebound. USMCA has been mentioned already. All three countries have ratified USMCA. It's important that the resulting legislation, rules, side letters, enforcement, that those details can continue to get hammered out, and that will help determine how USMCA plays out. We need to make sure that that implementation process results in stable, fair trade relationships for Wisconsin. So looking ahead, what do we need? I guess I would echo some of the comments that have been made previously. Free and open markets and trade relationships make an entire difference. We need to have access for Wisconsin products, Wisconsin processors, and ultimately the translation to Wisconsin producers as we move forward. Part of that is doing something that we were talking about before we got on air today, which is our nation having to manage and eliminate COVID-19. Building and maintaining relationships is a single most important aspect of international business, and it's best done in person. We've talked to companies, we talked to our International Agribusiness Center team, and there's really no substitute for it. While our team continues to consult virtually with companies one-on-one, working on virtual trade shows, it's just not the same as in-person contact at meetings. We can't do this until we have the ability to gather, travel safely to other countries. So what we've found is that COVID-19 hampers new business development. Companies can maintain existing relationships over the phone, but it's extremely important for us to make new connections in person. So managing COVID-19 is an important aspect to what we hope to do to get back out into the world. We were briefed just yesterday as part of our NASDA meeting that international trade trips are suspended for at least 90 days, and it's a rolling 90-day notice that's been issued. So we're looking out into the future. That's one aspect of it. But again, getting back to stable and open trade relationships. There was a slide as we were leading into this, and I think I saw the term #tariffs-hurt, and that is an important aspect here. We need to have free and open markets because those trade barriers really do affect the opportunities that we have internationally, and affecting those trade relationships internationally, it resounds back here at home in Wisconsin, in America's dairy land. Thanks for the opportunity to be here today, and look forward to a great conversation with everybody.
Randy, thanks very much. We're now going to shift, following these very informative statements, to taking questions from the audience. but I'm going to take the prerogative of asking the first question to all of the panel members. And then we may pick and choose individual panel members to respond to additional questions. I'm interested in, we've touched on a number of issues here in the opening comments, a number of opportunities, a number of challenges. What I'm interested in from your perspective and from your vantage point, what is the single most important opportunity that you see on the horizon, and what do you see as the single most significant barrier? Let's set aside pandemic for the time being. We all know and recognize the significance of that. But as it relates to trade, what do you see as the opportunity, and what do you see as the barrier? And so let me start with Jeff and get his perspective, and then I'm going to go to Chad, and I'll just move around here. Jeff, your perspective: best opportunity, biggest barrier.
When I look at the opportunity, I think the opportunity is to get fair bilateral trade agreements. And the biggest barrier is clearly the geographic indicator protections that Europe has got in their market, and they're trying to get around the world.
Chad, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the single biggest opportunity we have is, I know you said not COVID, but and I'm playing close to home in Wisconsin. It's really getting the ability back to have foreign buyers come to the state. I mean, once we get people in the state and they see the infrastructure and they see the cheese and they see the dairy that we produce and the quality, the sales just flow from that. And I think the biggest barrier, once again, to reiterate what Jeff had, I think the common food name in the intellectual property that we're trying to get, that's being blocked from us, are blocking our cheese access to too many countries around the globe. I think that's really one of the biggest barriers that we face.
Jeff, your thoughts?
I would agree that, we've developed such a great brand with Wisconsin, and making that branded product, and people want that product. I think as far as that's concerned, like I said, that's all our upper Midwest people. But that's one of the benefits, I think, for the trade that we see. The geographic indicators are going to come up. Like I said, we've spent so much time with that, and obviously with the European Union, it's a protection is what they're trying to do with that, protect their markets. Because quite frankly, I think in Wisconsin we make cheese as good or better than over there. So that's that's part of what they want to do, trying to protect their market. One of the challenges, like I said, and there's nothing anyone can do with it with respect to trade, that we always have had, is just the way our government and our system of government is put together, that every 4 or 8 years we change our presidents, and each of them have a different idea or view as to what they want to do with trade. It's different sets of negotiators, it's all those kinds of things. And when we're dealing, our companies are dealing with those other governments, they got people that are in place for long periods of time, and have a strategic plan on how we're doing it. And that's one of the challenges that we have to try to overcome here in the United States.
Very good. Randy?
I think opportunities, I guess I would focus in Wisconsin on the strength and diversity of our agriculture industry, specifically because we're talking about dairy today, the strength and diversity of our dairy industry. We produce a variety of high quality dairy products. That's certainly, we are a leader of that internationally. Cheese is well known. We have the great fortune, Jeff from Sartori is joining us today. Their name is known and respected throughout the world. We have a variety of companies like that in Wisconsin, who again just need to have that opportunity to compete on a fair basis. I think Jeff used the word fair basis on the front end. As far as barriers, I think we the instability or the lack of coalitions to address some of these things internationally. I think it's important that we, as the state of Wisconsin, are trying to promote fairness, and I think that sounds like a common denominator from what people have said so far. So I guess barriers are anything that gets in the way of that fair, open competition.
Last but certainly not least, Jim, you obviously are dealing with lots of opportunities and many barriers from your perspective at National Milk. Your thoughts?
Well, I think the panelists have put it very well and summed it up well. The opportunity for our industry is huge. We are among the most efficient milk producing countries in the world. And we have a strong processing industry. What we need to capitalize on the opportunity we have domestically with our strong industry is trade agreements that will level the playing field. We face so many barriers, both tariff and non-tariff, around the world, that until we can get that more level playing field, you look at any market you look at, the EU or New Zealand generally have better tariff advantages than we do in most of those countries. So we need to focus from U.S. trade policy that is designed to create that level playing field. We don't need any special advantage. We need just to have a level playing field. And on the barrier side, it's what Jeff said. It's the flip side of the opportunity. The barrier is if we don't have a trade policy that makes increasing U.S. dairy trade one of the key focuses of that approach.